Hi class, how are you? So here we are again for another lesson, and I'm going to share my screen with you like we always do. And let's see, here we go. All right, so we're going to be talking, and this is going to be a two-part class. We're going to be talking about cities and civilizations. So this is part one of this lesson, okay? So as populations grew, farming villages developed into cities. In several fertile river valleys, cities gave rise to the world's first civilizations. So pretty much all the first civilizations established near water because that was always the most important thing for mankind. Early civilizations had features in common. So we're going to see about the first cities. The world's first cities began as farming villages in the Middle East. As the villages grew, they began to trade with one another. Trade, like farming, became an important source of wealth. Let's talk about the city of Uruk. So, at the beginning of this chapter, you were reading a story about the ancient city of Uruk. And although the story that you read is a legend, the city was real. In fact, many historians consider Uruk to be the world's first city. It was founded nearly 6 to 7,000 years ago. So you can see here in the map, we have the Middle East. Right here is the Mediterranean Sea, the Red Sea, the Persian Gulf, and right here we have the city of Uruk. And also in the introduction, the story that you read in your book, you read about Catalhoyuk, which is in this part of Turkey right here. Okay? So Uruk was very different from Catalhoyuk and older farming villages. One difference, and it's a main difference, was Uruk's size. Catalhoyuk only covered about 32 acres and was home to no more than 6,000 people. In comparison, when Uruk was at its height, more than 40,000 people lived there. Uruk covered an area of nearly 1,000 acres and it had houses, gardens, and large public buildings such as temples. We can see here in the map again exactly the location of Uruk, which is in between the rivers Tigris and the Euphrates. Okay. Another difference was Uruk's form of government, and this is very important because villages such as Catalhoyuk had little need for complex government. People acted and made decisions according to ancient village customs. A village council settled most disputes. But on the other hand, a city such as Uruk was too large to manage that way, so they had to use a different form of government. Uruk had a strong, well organized government. The city's first rulers were probably temple priests. Later, powerful military leaders ruled Uruk as kings. These rulers had far more power than a village council did. So let's talk about the centers of wealth. A city such as Uruk also had a more complex economy than did early farming villages. An economy is the system that a community uses to produce and distribute goods and services. The economy of a society or a nation is defined by how it answers three basic questions. These questions are: what goods and services should be produced? How should goods and services be produced? And who should get and use goods and services? So those questions for economy still apply these days. In the earliest human communities, the answer to these three economic questions were fairly simple. Each group produced those goods and services that were necessary for its survival. The group produced these goods and services by hunting and gathering. We already studied the hunting and gathering societies. The goods and services were then shared by the members of the community. And they also had another system which is called barter. which is a means of trade in early human society before the advent of money. Goods were exchanged on a necessity basis, and the value was based on supply and demand. So basically, it was, do you have fish and I have apples? We will trade. That is what it's called bartering. Catalhoyuk's economy was based mainly on farming, but by contrast, Uruk's more complex economy was based on both farming and trade. Workshops that produced all kinds of goods lined in the city streets. So they had all kinds of shops. They had leather, they had pottery, they made tools with metal, etc. Traders from Uruk traveled widely. They went from one place to another to trade their goods for other goods. Archaeologists have found pottery and other trade goods from Uruk in many places in the Middle East. The wealth of Uruk and other early cities attracted many newcomers. People began to move from the countryside into the cities. Many early cities built walls to protect themselves from raiders. Uruk, for example, was surrounded by a thick wall that stretched for 6 miles around the city. This wall was a sign that Uruk was a wealthy city worth protecting. You can see that on the picture here. Well, it's an electronically produced drawing, but you can see the wall going all around, and it stretched almost 6 miles around the city. And we're going to find this is very common in ancient cities, that they built a wall to protect themselves. So this is the end of the first part of this lesson, and we will continue next class with the second part. I will see you next time, guys.